Um, I'm recording.
There's a
Devin still needs to record.
I'll do it. I'll do it.
So I'm going to fill the dead time because
It
this
actually
is
helps
this
when you
didn't get
cut.
edited out the last time. So just so everybody knows, we're just including our own blooper reel on this at the beginning. But all right, I
I
think we're
will.
ready
It
to go.
should
I'll
be
edit this
easy.
out. I went to edit it out, and apparently I was just doing it in haste. I had edited it out, but I didn't save it the right way afterwards. So I uploaded it, and then I was like, you know what? Devin said he
I
was gonna
mean,
edit it out.
honestly, at this point, it's everybody's favorite part.
Well,
So just
I
leave
mean,
it in.
all the other podcasts have this the Lord of the Rings and Hobbit music at the beginning. We have a bunch of guys going, "Have you hit record yet?" This is our intro music.
So if you actually say,
Everything's so professional now. There's like a content race and
Oh,
everything, and we're we're
not
we're
not
still here
everything
just
is professional.
clicking record, just
I
being like, all right.
the
It's
way
our
I always edited quickly was I would just not say anything, and then once I started speaking, the spikes would start occurring, and so you would know to cut right at that point. So if you speak during all this blooper reel, now it makes it actually harder for Alisher to do it that way.
Hey guys, thanks a lot for making my life hard.
You're welcome.
Yeah, well, we know you're just going to leave it in, and frankly, you should consider this, everybody, your intro music. Our intro music has now ended. We can start the episode.
There you go.
No, Devin's gonna put on his.
Devin, that's you. That's your
Well,
cue.
you said my entire purpose here is to be a pretty face, so I'm like,
Oh my
Geez,
goodness.
you had
I,
one
I
job.
actually need better lighting. I'm like all red and patchy. So, all right. Well, welcome everybody to another episode of an unexpected podcast. And today we got all of our hosts, Matt Iverson, Evan Iverson, and Alisher Amina. And today we're actually going to be going as far as we can into a subject that might take 2 episodes. So if you get to the end of this one and you're like, where's the rest of it? It's going to be on the next one after this. So, with that being said, Matt, what are we talking about today?
All right, so we are going to talk about the good. We're going to start with the armies of the Hobbit, and we're going to talk about the good armies from the armies of the Hobbit. And the reason we chose to start with this book is because we have slightly more experience with these armies than the other ones. We're still kind of getting our feet wet in this edition. I don't know about the rest of you. I played, I think, 8 tournament games at this point, and probably about the same or slightly more friendly games. And I think probably the majority of the largest chunk of armies that I've either played or faced have been from good Hobbit armies. But maybe it's worth actually telling our listeners how much experience we all have actually had up to this point, so they understand how little credence they could give to what it is we're about to say.
All right.
Dude, I've played 3 games.
So, I have 5.
Oh,
Going up, yeah. Beat my
I want
chest
to
on that one.
jip you
I
out.
have one tournament under my belt as of current, so
Did you play with or against any Hobbit armies whatsoever, Devin?
we actually went over it, me and your father. I think it was just Dale was the only Hobbit army, which apparently might be the only one worth, you know, going against and learning about, since it seems like it might be a big thing. But I can't remember any other Hobbit armies that day. It was all Lord of the Rings. So I if
Alisher,
I
you've only played 3 games. I thought you had
No,
played
I
more.
was saying Devin. I was making fun of Devin.
Oh, okay. All right.
oh, okay.
And you
Well,
were you were shockingly accurate.
yeah, no, I missed out that
Well, no,
like
he
two
was
off.
actually.
2 whole more games than I gave him credit
I
for.
mean, that really
Right.
is the difference between the
That's
experts and
true. It
not.
was a
Almost
66%
double.
increase, so
You know what?
I shouldn't diminish that.
I mean, that's a really high error rate. That's like 40% off or something. I don't know. Like,
What's your record of those 5K?
I won. God, I got what was it? Evan, third or second?
I
What
think you
place did I
came in
get?
third.
I think you're 60%.
Yeah. I was like six. Somewhere like. I mean, it's not a big tournament by any means, but I got like I think it was 3 wins and 2 losses. I think it's something like that.
All right, Alisher. So what's your experience?
I want to say I've played 10 games, maybe somewhere between 10 and 12. I've played at one tournament up in Philly and maybe 7 to 9 practice games at this point. Um, I guess it's in the Hobbit book. I mean, I've played predominantly Thranduil's Halls, which obviously is in the Hobbit book, and then Rivendell has been my go-to army for this edition so far.
Mm.
Which is
Right.
also in the Hobbit book.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Evan, what about you?
I've played the same amount of games that Dad has, minus like 5 to 10, depending on how many games he's played since I left for Ireland, because I haven't played at all since I left for Ireland, which was like the 17th, 18th. But before that, I played in the same tournament that Devin and Dad did, and like maybe like 4 or 5 practice games. Well, practice games, mainly test games in the sense that we just wanted to throw armies at each other and see what happened. Um, but yeah, around like 10-ish.
Gotcha. All right.
I
Well,
mean, to be fair, most of our experience is going to mirror a lot of people, except in like really super competitive games. So
and
I
those
don't
guys
think. I
aren't
mean,
For
listening to
British
us.
people.
yeah, like I mean, even if you went to every single British tournament as of current, you'd have what they do one every other weekend or one every weekend.
No. I mean, if you mean every other British 100 pointer, then
Yeah,
maybe they'd have like 12-ish games, something like that.
yeah.
But they have, I think, at least some sort of tournament basically every week.
Okay.
Um,
So I guess if you were doing all the 80 pointers too, then you could theoretically have a ton of games under your
oh,
belt.
Devin, there's 90 pointers now too. Don't
Oh,
ask
well,
me. I don't know.
well, all right. I mean, given that we don't have a league in America, or well,
We
is
have
there a league in
We
regional
America?
technically
leagues,
do.
Yeah,
Devin.
Anyways,
We
yeah,
have
that's
let's
like a new
let's
thing.
regional
let's get out
leagues.
of regional
All
league
right, fair enough.
politic
You're gonna
stuff and
offend
let's go into
3
the reason
people by
people are
saying
actually
that,
here.
Devin.
Yeah, I
Aren't
don't
you
want.
guys so glad that we
I
haven't
meant a
even gotten into our
national.
topic at all in the first 10 to 15 minutes of the
Yeah, there we go.
podcast?
Yeah,
It's
This is
almost
what
we
they
don't want
podcast.
signed
anybody
up
coming up
for.
from Philly to hit me with a tire iron in the kneecap. So,
True.
all right.
So what's the first faction we got?
First faction we have up is Thorin's Company, which is it's the 13 dwarves and Gandalf and Bilbo that we would expect, with some other special guests as possibilities. So in this army, you can get, well, in fact, I think you have to get Thorin Oakenshield, who leads the army. He's a hero of legend, and you can get Orcrist and the Oakenshield for him. And you got a variety of heroes of valor. You have Gandalf the Grey, Keely, Feely, Balin, Dwalin. You can stick Gway here in this list, which is a new thing.
Which you
Um,
will do unless there are restrictions.
that's not necessarily true.
I
And
would.
Great Eagles, which can be in Gwayhere's warband.
Don't do
Then
that.
you have Radagast the Brown, who can show up on his sleigh, which is Radagast's sleigh is now a chariot that does 2 strength 4 impact hits. So those little
Oh,
bunnies have really
Why?
sharp fangs that
Well,
can, kind of carve through people.
they're actually huge bunnies.
They are
I don't
huge
know if you
bunnies.
saw, they're massive. That's like
they're
half the size
big
of a human.
buddies, but
I'm
like
sorry, but if you get attacked by one of those bunnies, Evan,
they're
you're
not
going down.
attacking, they're running over you. Like
That's like 12
it's
massive,
like
they're like big dogs.
Well,
It's like the dog sled. They're not big dogs, they're small dogs. I just don't think the two strength four hits are
Yeah, you're small
justified.
dogs.
all right.
Well,
So
justified or
there's
not, the rules give a.
the rules. I mean, so there is a movie that I think came out in 1972, the year I was born, that involved um, giant mutant radioactive bunnies overrunning a town and like jumping through windows and chewing people's throats out. And I'll have to find the name of that movie, and I'll when I have some downtime and somebody else is talking, I'll try and figure that out. But the reason I bring that up is because these bunnies are now pulling Radagast slaying. And these bunnies are like the size of cows and have really razor sharp fangs, and they will just run you into the ground. So,
Either that or they're like a bunch of mini troll brutes and they've got like little morning stars on their feet that they crush you as they walk over you.
exactly.
That makes sense.
Uh, all right, so we have Radagast. Those are the heroes of valor, but we digress. And then we get to the heroes of fortitude, where we have the rest of the dwarves: Bifur, Bofur, Bomber, Ori, Nori, Dori, Oin, Gloin, and then you get Bilbo, who can have Sting in the One Ring. So the way this list has to be organized is you have to, Thorin's always your general. All Thorin's company models, which is basically everybody but Gwaihir and Radagast, have to be in Thorin's warband. You can only include eagles if your army also includes Gandalf, which is the reason why Gwaihir is not an auto take in this list, is because first you have to get Gandalf. Gandalf's 170 points. And then you can tack on Gwaihir, who's 150 points. So it's like a 320 point add to get Gwaihir into this army. And frankly, a lot of these dwarves have become really good at this point. And you kind of have to think twice about whether you want to take anything but dwarves in this list, because you got to sacrifice a lot of dwarves to get Gandalf and Gwaihir, and that's a big trade-off. And then Great Eagles can only be taken in Gwaihir's warband. So if you want to get a Great Eagle warrior, you got to tack another 100 points onto that 320 point investment that you've already made just to get Gwaihir. The math there is very difficult unless you're like around 1,000 points to make that work. And then we get to the special rules. So for the special rules, if your army contains only Thorin's company models, which means you can't take Radagast, you can't take Gwaihir, you can't take Gandalf because he's got the Thorin company keyword. But friendly dwarf models can spend their will points to declare a heroic march instead of using might points, even if they don't normally have the ability to call a heroic march. So because this is called off of will and not might, there's a lot of will in this army. There are guys in here like Oin, who has 5 points of will. You can basically, if you don't take Radagast and you don't take Gwaihir, you can march with this army every turn and still have all of your 15, 16, 17 points of might when you finally get to the army. And because their defense values are fairly low in this, if you're heading into these high shooting armies, you really need to be doing that. So that's something to think about. Next rule, we're making a long-term deposit.
Did
At
you?
the beginning of the game, you can choose one objective marker on the board. Friendly dwarf models within range of that objective marker get the dominant 2 special rule. This is really useful in hold ground, kind of somewhat less useful in domination because you got to pick one. But if you want to pick the one in the center of the board for domination, this is pretty useful. And then you have the family ties special rule, which is like the key to this list. And the dwarves are all divided into family groups. So for those who can't follow a rhyming scheme, Balin and Dwalin are a family group. They're related to each other. Keely and Feely are a family group. They're related to each other. Bifur, Bofur, and Bomber are a family group. They're related to each other. Ori, Nori, and Dori, same thing. Oin, Gloin, same thing. Within this family group, as long as they're within 3 inches of each other, they can spend each other's might, will, and fate freely, which is an enormous advantage. Because what it allows dwarves to do is basically cover the deficiencies when one guy's about to get overwhelmed and or he just tanks a die roll and he needs to pull like 3 might out of his pocket to win and stay alive, or if he's Dwalin and he's already spent all his will and he's about to get transfixed, he's within 3 inches of Balin, he can just start pulling Balin's will to start resisting spells. Um, this is a key rule, and this is kind of one of the reasons why you have to kind of think twice in this list if you're going to start sacrificing dwarves, because you really want to start buying these dwarves in family group packages to make the most out of this special rule. Um, it's also worth, I think on a previous podcast, we went through the various special rules of the dwarves here. I think maybe we can kind of go through that at some point in more detail when we're talking about it. But it's more than we can kind of do on this particular podcast when we're not focusing on a particular list. But if you're going to play with or against Thorin's Company, make sure you go and you read through all of the dwarves' special rules, because there are a lot of them, and some of them are really useful. Especially like I think we talked about the Beaufort special rule that like negates magic. He has basically a 3 inch bubble of no magic or no special rules within 3 inches of him, which is enormously useful.
How did that get legislated at the tournament you went to? Because you were talking about like, what is
Yeah.
a special rule that applies? How much did you get away with?
So it basically came down to if it was something that affected a stat on me or would cause something to happen to my figure, like being knocked down. It was a special rule that affected me.
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm recalling correctly, like monstrous cavalry was ruled as a rule that affected me because it knocked me down.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and whereas stuff that was just like +1, +1 to wound because it affected the
Yeah.
guy who was rolling against me,
Mhm.
that didn't get canceled.
Okay.
Um, but something like a trample would get canceled. So there were a few games. There was like a game I played against like Men of the West where it just didn't matter because they didn't have any special rules that affected me. And then there were like games I played like against Minas Morgul where it just like eviscerated the army's
Uh-huh.
point of being, because it was just like this 3 inch bubble of like damping effect on magic and also on like the Blaze of the Dead, because that if you read the rule on Blaze of the Dead, it affects you. It changes your defense value. Um, so Minas Morgul was in a lot of trouble against. I was playing Arabor at that point, but Minas Morgul was in a lot of trouble there. So anyway, I've talked about this army a lot. Why don't we go through and pull the panel, and I'll come back and talk a little bit, because I think I may be the only one on this podcast who's actually played this list. I only played it once, but I played it. And so let's go through it. I'm just going to start. I'm going to go counterclockwise from the left. So on the left of my screen is Devin. So Devin, your thoughts on this? So remember, we've got 4 categories here. We're going to put these in, and that's dominant, which is basically if you're a competent player and you bring this to a tournament, you really ought to win, unless you're running into another dominant army or something bad happens. Competitive, which means that if you're a competent player and you bring this to a tournament, you have a decent chance of winning, unless maybe you get squashed by one of the dominant lists. Playable, which means if you're a competent player, you bring it to a tournament, yeah, maybe you'll win, and you're probably going to have, or at least you have a decent shot of having a positive win-loss record. And then useless, which means even if you're a competent player, if you bring it to a tournament, you're going to get crushed. And keeping in mind that some of these ratings may vary based on what points level you're playing. Devin, what's your thoughts
Yeah.
on Thorin's Company?
So a lot of my thoughts are going to come from like past experience with all hero lists, which is something that I'm pretty familiar with. I like playing all hero lists. And you have an all hero list though that moves very slow. I understand you have ways to get around that, and I imagine you didn't utilize any of it, right? No Gua here, no Radagast, nothing.
No.
So if I had to make a thought before you played in that tournament, because I think from my understanding you did pretty well, and it might be due to dominant, which
Well,
is the
he
fact
played
that
a different army
I
list.
did. I played Arabor Reclaim, which has
got it.
some,
High levels defense.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. It's
Marching every
different on
turn, I
certain
think.
levels.
Yeah. So just only going off of that, which is a little bit rough to use for this, meta, but I would have often said it's probably less than good. So like, what was the one below competitive?
Playable.
Playable.
Playable. So I would have said something like
Well,
that. Now,
well,
again,
would you think it is possible to win a tournament with it? Because that's the criteria for playable, right?
the
Is
problem
It
a
is I
playable army
cannot
could
po-
potentially win a
I
tournament.
cannot
possibly,
take it
but
to
probably not for
I,
this.
Yes.
yeah, and the thing is, the only reason I'll say yes, it's possible to win is because I can't account for the Gwahir and Magic, Radagast, whatever Gandalf in the list. I can't adjust for that with the points in my mind because I've never played a list like that technically. Well, not that I've never. I mean, I've done an all-foot army with an eagle sprinkled in and whatnot, but you know, the Eagles, eh, their hurls operate differently now, so that does matter in a list that has such few numbers. So you can't use the monster to just completely crash lines. You can't use magic quite in the same way. Not that magic was super more powerful before, but like assassinations are a little harder to set up. So if you have a big hero running around, they're a little harder to just get rid of than they were before in the previous edition. So like again, hard for me to really take into account, but if I were to just guess only by seeing what I'm seeing and not playing this specific army before, I would say it's probably just playable. If you won a tournament, I don't think it would be Articon. I don't think it would be a Warhammer World GT unless you were a phenomenal player and your matchups were pretty favorable.
Somebody out there has like 5 years to accomplish either of those things to make Devin look really stupid.
I mean, they do. Here's the thing: is like even especially in these scenarios, I have to take into account one thing: is that you're starting on the other end of the board, you're slow, and everyone's got guns now. So it's just like you're. I just think you're gonna get shot off the board in a lot of
So
these scenarios.
what is the average defense of these dwarves, Dad? Do they hit six or are most of them
Five.
five?
They're fours and fives. There's a
Ooh.
few. There's a few sixes out there.
I just think you're gonna get
Um,
blown up.
yeah,
So,
Shooting is definitely a problem for them because
yeah.
elves
There's
can just shoot out one or two of them before combat and then it'll snowball.
even
yeah.
if you go to
What?
a higher points levels at 800 or whatever, you get Gandalf. Cool. Most armies that have Gandalf, Galadriel, or whatever with the blinding light have a lot of bodies that can mitigate losses. So you're just taking so few losses because of the blinding light that now the one or two bodies you got killed don't matter. Here in this case, you lose one dwarf, and that's a serious issue. So if you just focus fire into a defense fire dwarf, just even with what 15 shots, I mean, I don't know the math behind it, but you could get lucky and take a dwarf down. I mean, granted, yeah, it'll be behind dwarf bodies, and they'll be hide behind terrain, whatever they can. But I think it's gonna be a painful day. So
Yeah. So you can get Thorin is a seven, and you can get the Oaken Shield, which brings him up to an eight. Um, Dwalin is six. Gloin is seven, and then the rest of the dwarves are kind of like half fives and half fours. So you can you can kind of hide some dwarves behind the tougher ones and create in the ways you're moving 8 inches a turn, which helps. But I think that is kind of the big vulnerability of this army
That's
is
with
shooting.
shooting with like a really, really heavy shooting force. That's like with strength three, which is a lot of them because a lot of the strength three bows armies are very good in this edition. That's 3 to 4 wounds a turn against defense five or four. And you're marching, so you're move eight, but you start 24 inches away because these scenarios are great.
Yeah.
Um, so that's like 12, maybe probably more like 10 wounds, which is killing I'd say conservatively two dwarves because you do get to stack fate points, but even then, like 10 wounds is a
Yeah.
lot, and you're burning a lot of fate points as well.
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
there's tricks you can use, like, because you can stack the fate points and to keep
and the
kind
healing from
of
Oin is nice,
Oin,
but
Oin
that's
has a 50%
50% and
chance.
that's one wound.
Yeah.
Um,
Um, but still, it's a problem. There's no question it's a problem. All right, so we got
yeah.
definite playable. Um, Alisher, where do you come out?
Um, Probably playable. Like I to some degree, like, there are so many different types and like levels of tournaments in the sense like this could win a tournament. Like I think I kind of look at the like could this win a 3 game tournament at a local hobby shop? 100%. So I think it's playable. I think you'd enjoy playing it. I like scanning through the rules just briefly. I think they did a good job kind of transitioning into this edition to like fix or at least like round out some of the rough edges that you typically see or would have seen with All Hero Armies last edition, um, which I really like. I think this is probably one of those examples of how this edition was benefited by the restriction to allying, in the sense that they can make a list like this work a little bit more effectively. But I don't, this isn't like uber competitive, but at the same time, you could win a 3 game tournament at a hobby shop pretty easily, I think. Or, with moderate effort for sure.
Ev, what's your thought?
Hmm. I think it's maybe middle of the pack to the lower end of playable. Um, Similar to what other people have said, I could see it win tournaments, but they'd have to be very small, because this list is going to despise elves, which are very good. Um, it's just going to hate strength three shooting spam in general. I don't think Dale is going to be overly fun for it either. Um, Defense seven, which there's not a lot of, but Minas Tirith might be difficult for it just because it doesn't have a lot of +1 to wound, and the tide fight value isn't ideal because there is a lot of fight four in that army. Um, but on the other hand, fight three armies, it completely eviscerates. So, um, and I think that keeps it out of like the unplayable territory. Did I I miss they have some sort of take an objective special rule, right? But not dominance.
You can pick one objective and be dominant two
Okay.
for the dwarves.
And I assume that objective cannot be running off the board.
No, it has to be either the center and hold ground
Yeah.
or
So if
yeah,
you hit a 6 game tournament, you're not winning it. So I think that thoroughly kicks them out of the competitive tier, because you just can't win Reconnoiter. Um, so yeah, those are my thoughts basically.
yeah. Um, so I mean, I guess these are in the playable range for me. I think I'm having played this kind of. I'd put them on the top half of the playable, because and part of this depends on points level because I think this army has a sweet spot around the mid 700s range because I think actually to get all of the dwarves you need 760
So
points.
okay.
Um, and I think that's about kind of where you want to be. Um,
So coming to a 760 point tournament near you.
yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, you can fiddle around with this a little bit and make it an 800 or whatever. But I mean, this is one of those lists where there are certain lists where it's certain lists in certain scenarios like Dale into the death because no banners in this list that are going to be really hard to win. And then there are going to be, you know, certain lists or, certain armies, like, for example, Minas Morgul, um, uh, that's going to be fight three and all the magic's bouncing off, and these guys will go through Minas Morgul like a hot knife through butter. And I think they also, by the way, are a big problem for eagles too, and the all monster lists. But there's a lot of matchups where this army is going to do really well. There's a few matchups where it's really going to struggle, like Reconnoiter, and stuff against high shooting armies where you start far away. And I think you're right. That's going to prevent them from winning most tournaments, unless it's like a 3 or 4 game tournament and you just kind of don't have that matchup. Or if you end up playing, Reconnoiter against, something small, that has a bigger problem.
The issue is now something small will have dominant.
That's
Which
true, but
makes
I mean,
things trickier.
these guys can take down the 3 trolls easily.
What they cannot take down is 7 or 8 eagles flying right past them and right
Yeah,
off
no,
the
that's going to
board
be a
and
problem.
winning the game that way.
That's going to be a problem. Certainly so. But but something like Ents is really going to struggle, I think, against these guys, or trolls where there's like 3 or 4 models and these guys can probably kill 2 of them. But all right. So I think we're all kind of on the same page, playable with Thorin's company. Let's turn the page. We have Army of Thror. Alisher, do you want to talk through Army of Thror?
Ooh.
Yeah. All right. Army of Thror. Heroes of Legend. Thror, King under the Mountain. Heroes of Valor. Thrain, son of Thror. Young Thorin Oakenshield. Young Balin the Dwarf. Young Dwalin the Dwarf. Dwarf King. Heroes of Fortitude. Arabor Dwarf Captain. Grim Hammer Captain. Warriors. Arabor Dwarf Warrior with their array of warrior option and Grim Hammers. Special rules. No restrictions in terms of how you build this army, but friendly airborne models treat Thor as a banner with a range of 6 inches. Friendly airborne models gain a plus bonus of 1 when making strikes against enemy models that are in possession of an objective marker. Additionally, friendly airborne models are within their deployment zone may deployment zone may reroll to wound rolls of natural 1 when making strikes. Yeah. When you guys probably know better, the term possession of an objective marker, is that like holding a relic, or is that like having more models slash dominance around an objective?
Possession's actually a new word that we haven't seen used in this game, I don't believe.
I think, and I will look it up, that an objective marker is that, because that's a defined term, and I think that's something you pick up. But I'm
If
gonna.
I were to guess, only based
That
on,
makes sense.
I would think they have to be holding it,
Yeah.
but
Which is really cool because there are currently 0 scenarios where he would get those points.
yeah,
I'm fairly sure.
All right, so objective markers show up on page 157 of the rule book. It's a defined term. Many match play scenarios require the use of objective markers to represent things on the battlefield. They are always represented by a 25 millimeter marker, are treated as open ground. Oh, wait a minute. Hang on a second. No, actually, hang on. Huh. So objective markers are indeed the things in domination and hold ground, I think. Because this is, if you read this rule, this is the marker
hold on.
that's on the ground. Let me actually look at the scenarios here for domination. Yeah, no. I mean, the things in
Does it
domination are
use the
called
word-
objective markers.
Does it use the word possession? What does possession of an objective marker mean? I think is more of the question, not what is an objective marker. What does possession of an objective marker mean?
Good question. And I'm looking through, because none of the 6 scenarios involve an objective marker that can be possessed. The closest we come is destroy the supplies, but even those you destroy, you don't actually possess them. All right, so I think this is,
Because I think it's usually control an
Yeah.
objective marker instead of possess.
yeah, I suspect that this is a rule that applies to scenarios that we don't have yet.
Yeah. For my seize the prize and retrieval lovers, maybe two of you exist. This is the army for you.
Hmm. And heirlooms of ages past.
Oh, then one of you exists, and that's Dad.
Yeah, so I think that's what it's got to be
And we're
because
getting
just looking over how
scenarios.
the other
All of them are going to be holding objects.
right
Hmm.
because just looking over
Yeah,
how
that's the
the
best part
language
is
is.
that one dwarf will have possession of an object, and one of them will get +1 to wound. It's +1 to
Um,
wound, right? It's not reroll ones,
no,
please.
it's when you're making strikes at an enemy model that is in possession of an objective marker.
Oh,
So,
so it's
if the eagle comes up and
worse.
grabs the thing in the middle and you can gang up on the eagle, everybody that's fighting that eagle gets +1 to wound.
Oh,
Which isn't actually a bad. I mean, that's not a bad special rule for those scenarios. It's just we don't
see
happen to
if
have
the
any of those
Eagle
scenarios yet.
player doesn't know how to play the game. Instead, they should be sending Gwahir and calling a heroic defense. Anyways, the rule's bad. I think we can all agree on that.
I mean, I don't think it's necessarily a bad rule. I think it's a decent rule. I mean, I don't think it makes or breaks
My,
this
my
particular
point
army.
is that the rule doesn't contribute anything meaningful to the army.
Not right now. It certainly doesn't. Yeah, at least as we're reading it.
Which is a shame because for those keen listeners who have watched our previous podcast, or I guess the not keen listeners that have still watched our podcast and hopefully remember, this army is not very good. The main issue being that basically everything in the army was nerfed, and the army was, I'd say, barely in the competitive tier before. Like a couple of people accomplished pretty decent things with it in the last edition, but it had its glaring weaknesses, and now its strengths are gone. In the sense that basically all of the heroes you take got more expensive. The Arabor captain got 3 attacks because he's got 2 weapons in his hands, which is cute. But other than that, the Arabor warriors went up by 1 point and got Mountain Dweller, which is not worth 1 point, especially because rocky terrain isn't that prevalent. Um, and Grimhammers are now forced to go two-handed. Um,
But if
Plus, you
you
get
it's
roll
just
that
kind of a
six,
sad army. Um,
roll that nat six, they're vibing.
yeah, I wouldn't put it down in unviable trash, but I do think it's firmly in the playable tier. Maybe even lower than Thorn's Company.
oh yeah, there's no
Lower.
question this is lower than Thorin's company.
I almost think
Um,
like trash is reserved for just like good luck. You just to even win half your games, you're gonna need to
yeah.
like I don't know, maybe is that bar too low?
Well, no, I mean, I think we can just say this is. I mean, for me at least, this is lower half of playable.
Yeah, I
I mean, I
mean,
could.
yeah, it's no matter what, this will still be a shield wall army that is defense 7, so it will be able to outgrind some armies. So I can't in good faith put it in unviable. It is extremely disappointing. It also does still have the 6-inch banner, which is extremely
Well,
good.
sort of. It has a guy that counts that is treated as a banner. So it does
Yes.
not actually have a banner, which with today's Saturn
Oh yeah,
today's
that's
scenario
true. No,
matchup,
nobody comes with a banner
yeah,
in this
nobody
list, right?
comes with a banner in this list, and not only that, because fight everybody moves 5 inches, and there's no real shooting weapons in this. You have no way to kill the other guy's banner.
Yeah, this
Or
list is getting camped out into the death.
yeah,
That is
um,
for sure. Um, yeah, it's just sad. It can win games. It might win a smaller tournament. It won't win a bigger one.
yeah. I think that's right. I mean, the there's I mean the the Grim Hammers also, by the way, you can't have more than a third of your army with Grim Hammers now because of the throwing
To be
weapon
fair, you
restriction.
wouldn't want it
Fair
because they're
point.
bad,
I
but
mean, there
that
used to
is
be an army
correct.
build for this though that just kind of maxed out on Grimhammers and just was like throwing weapon, throwing weapon, throwing weapon. You can't do that anymore. And yeah, so I think you're right. I think this is one where if you go to a decent sized tournament and you win more than half your games, you've had a good day. I think with this list.
Yeah, it's just disappointing because none of this had to happen.
Yeah,
This is one of the ones where none of these nerfs were in any way necessary. Nobody was calling for any of these models to be nerfed, but they got nerfed anyways. And now the army list, and not only were some of them nerfed, they were all nerfed. Um, so the army list is just not great now. And I am sorry for the army of Thor lovers out there.
I can't wait for Ali King to comment on this video and give us all the reasons why we're wrong and why that this is
No, I'm fairly sure I saw a podcast with him on it, and I'm fairly sure
Yeah,
he
I
was
think it's
really
Gollum's
depressed about
Gamer.
this too.
Oh, sorry. Okay, never mind. There's no hope for you.
Yep.
If the biggest Army of Thor advocate is on the list.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of these changes to this army list almost seem like they were made at Ali King. I have to say.
Sorry, man.
Well, we won't insinuate that, but
Yeah, no, I mean, we won't come out and say that explicitly, even though we know it to be true.
well, I don't know what proof you have. So I'm not gonna jump that
Yep.
one. That's not the grenade I'm gonna grab.
Anyways, does anybody have anything else to say about this very
There's
sad,
nothing
sad
else to
list,
say.
or are we
You guys,
confident in
man,
it?
we're just
low
so
carbon?
depressing talking about it.
I mean, we already, yeah. There's
feel
no
like
way.
there's
Unless you
like-
disagree with what you just said, there's really
Yeah,
nothing
but
else to
by the
say.
way, any viewers who need to leave the room, take a break, we totally understand. I know it's tough hearing about this.
That's right.
I think usually I'm like more naively like optimistic about things, but you guys like totally killed the vibe. I have nothing positive to say. All right, guys, sorry. You got yeah.
But hey, your Arabor captain has 3 attacks now.
That's right. So you can just create an army of Thror army that just has Arabor captains.
Entirely Arabor
Oh, and
captains.
Thror.
To be totally honest, it'll probably outperform one that just takes the shit warrior. So
It's probably
maybe
true.
do it.
Oh my
Their
god.
defense 7, 3 attacks for what, 70, 75 points?
Let's see, how many are there actually? Let's see.
Ignore the
Arabor,
fact that
75 points.
most of the Arabor reclaimed heroes are about the same points and are better.
Yeah.
Including, but not limited to, Nori, who is the same points, also has 3 attacks, and also has defense 9, and an extra will and fate. But anyways, take the captains. They're broken.
Yep. All right. All right. So I guess that brings us to the Iron Hills. And so this is the Iron Hills from the beginning of the Battle of the Five Armies when they're squaring off against the elves. So we have Dane Ironfoot, who can come with his Warbor that now costs 25 points, which is actually, I think, it's a pretty decent
That's a
price.
good trade.
Yeah, because a horse is 20 points, and this is a 2-wound defense 6 pig.
The bigger nerf is Dane went up by 20 points.
Yeah, he's 160 points now.
Base, yeah.
Spoilers, GW, please don't watch.
All right, Jay.
But yeah, he's 160, and he was 140, which people have argued was low, which I do agree with. I think he's about where he should be now.
I mean, especially with a
Here,
25-point pig.
But before we talk about anything about it, finish off the army because it's not a long one.
All right, so you can also get Dwarf Kings in this list, which is interesting for 85 points. So you can get your fight 6 super captain. You can get Iron Hills captains at 80 points. And you can get the Iron Hills Chariot upgrade to the captain, which I think is the only circumstance under which you want to take an Iron Hills Chariot.
Captain. Oh, in
Um,
an Iron Hills chariot.
I think there are circumstances you might want to take the captain, but
On an
without the
Iron
king.
Hills chariot, I feel like you.
Say again?
I feel like you
Yeah,
should
but
take it.
the captain has the Master of Battle, which has some uses and is slightly cheaper. Um,
5 up isn't great, and fight 6 is really good.
I would
that's
take
true.
it personally, especially since like all of the dice are now his dice. Like he can modify any of them on the chariot
No, they're not
normally.
talking about taking it on the chariot. They're saying if you just like, is a captain worth it by itself?
Oh,
I
just
think
by
we are doing the classic unexpected podcast of unknowingly holding two conversations at once and then hoping that the viewers can piece together what the heck we're talking about.
Yeah.
Let's discuss the captain versus king thing first, and then we can
got it.
move on to the
No.
chariot.
Let
Stay. You could
here.
stay on that.
Let's finish the list. Let's finish the list
Dear
before
God,
we.
okay.
All right. So we have Iron Hills Warriors that you can take, and they're the backbone of the army. You can get them with banner and shield, with banner without shield, shield and spear, crossbow, or matic. And you can get an Iron Hills Goat Rider, where you can exchange War Spear for matic for some reason. And you can get the
They
Iron
get
Hills Chariot.
charged, then you want to
Yeah,
go two-handed, so you lose and then lose your goat. That's the
right.
trick.
Yeah. You can get the Iron Hills Chariot on its own, which is a puzzling choice, and the Iron Hills Ballista for 130 points. So you have to take Dane in this list. That's the additional rule that goes with it.
Which is
And
actually
then
unfortunate that you can't
yeah,
just make a Iron Hills list without taking that one specific character.
yeah, no, I mean
It
this
is
is
especially odd seeing as you can take dwarf kings, which is
Yeah.
right.
like, are there multiple kings in the Iron Hills? Like, maybe there is, and I just don't know. But wouldn't then that king lead an army? Whatever.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
should
it's
say Dwarf
puzzling.
King or yeah.
Yeah, it's puzzling, but apparently you got to take Dane. Your special rules are Iron Foot has come, which means that when you're scenarios where you're rolling for warbands to arrive, you can modify the roll for warbands by +1 or -1, which is actually an interesting trade. One of the things I hadn't realized until fairly recently is they took away the ability to use might to decrease a reinforcement roll. So if you're doing Maelstrom of Battle and you roll a 2, your only option, absent some sort of special rule, is to spend 2 points to bring that up to a 4. Otherwise,
Yeah,
you're
and
stuck.
rolling a one means you're well. I mean, rolling a one would always mean you're off the board.
Right.
But yeah, a two is very bad.
Yeah. But this special rule allows you to decrease the 2 to a 1, which you can't otherwise do. And then the next one is Yanad Durinal. I'm not going to pronounce that. The next
It's
rule is
perfect then.
something in Dwarfish. And friendly infantry models may reroll wounds of a natural 1 when making strikes, so long as they're in base contact with 2 or more friendly models. So when you're fighting, I guess, in a shield wall, you can reroll 1s to wound, which is meh.
Okay.
Long March from the Iron Hills. Friendly models gain the Mountain Dweller special rule, which allows you to ignore the difficult terrain that exists on roughly 3% of the table space that you're ever going to play on. And then I've always found Thorin the more reasonable of the two. Dane gets the Master of Battle 5+ special rule. So he used to have a 4+ as part of the Army special rule. He's got a 5+ now,
I
which
don't know
is
why him not being reasonable gives him Master of Battle, but
I don't either.
anyways,
Yeah. But yeah, so that's the list. So with that in mind, let's have the great Iron Hills Captain versus Dwarf King debate. Hold fast. Make your case.
I
Somebody.
mean, fight 6. The king, what does the king have? Resolve and March?
That's what
Is
I'm
the
looking at.
captain not fight 6? They're fight 5.
They're 5/5.
Where is that?
Kings are also. I assume the king does not have defense?
I'm trying desperately to find the king, and I'm not finding
It'd
him
be in
in.
Iron Hills, I think.
Well, he'd be in the Dwarven Holds, but I'm trying to figure out where in the Dwarven Holds he would be.
Oh, I think he's after Gloin at the end for some reason.
And
Gloin is at the very, very end of the Dwarven Holds, and I think he's after him.
yep, there he is, hidden at the end, 85 points. So the Dwarven King is fight 6, strength 4, defense 8, 2 attacks, 2 wounds, courage 4 plus, intelligence 4 plus, 2 might, 2 will, 2 fate. He has march and he has resolve.
Yeah. I
Uh,
mean so it's basically 5-up master of battle and the ability to shield versus plus 5 points, fight 6, +1 will, +1 fate.
yeah. Oh, he's also fearless,
I
by the way. If he is an Iron Hill Dwarf King, he is also fearless
Yeah, that doesn't matter because the captain will be fearless as well because of Dane. Um,
until Dane dies.
but yeah, well, I mean, if Dane dies in your Iron Hills army, you've probably got bigger concerns.
Probably right.
But that is true. Um,
The Iron
I just
Hills
really value
captain.
the I
Oh,
just
go
really
ahead. Sorry.
value the fight 6 in the current meta. There's so many fight 5 models, um, and just being able to eclipse them and then contest other fight 6 heroes, make them force them to strike. And the +1 fate assists you in being able to take on other heroes as well. Because neither the captain nor the king are going to be great troop grinders, anyways. And the king at least will be more likely to be able to tank incoming heroes and waste their resources more. They're also, I believe, heroes of
Uh,
valor instead of fortitude, which is very good in Iron Hills because you are very often struggling for warband slots.
all right.
I
So the
think that
advantage of the
alone is a
captain would
huge argument.
be he's 5 point cheaper, 5 points cheaper. He's fight 5, so you do lose that fight 6. He's only 2-1-1 in Might, Will, and Fate. His courage is 1 less. His intelligence is 1 less. But
The
he
intelligence
has
might be relevant in a couple of situations as
he
well, like with
has
specters.
he has Master of Battle 5 plus, which is useful. He also has Shield Wall, which means if you stick him in the Dwarf Shield Wall, he's suddenly Defense 9, which is a very useful defense to have. So I think that's probably the main argument for the
He can't ride war goats, can he?
no, not anymore. I think that's probably the main argument for the Iron Hills captain is if you stick him in a shield wall, you've got a defense 9 tank that you can stick in front of somebody, which is
With Master of Battle, right? Do they still retain that?
say again? Yeah,
Five
with
up.
With
Master of
Master,
Battle.
Yeah.
which is if you're in the front line with a shield wall and you're going against like Cav armies or armies that like to charge continuously. I understand the first turn Cav will get the charge, but beyond that, once you're in, um, that could also be another benefit to having them.
Yeah. I
Just if
mean,
you're going to be putting them in the front line like that.
defense 9 is good because it means you can put him into your average fight 4 hero and you're getting wounded on 6s by 4s,
Yeah.
which is useful.
I would say just for that alone, there's a point to them, but more often than not, you're taking a king. The argument about the valor versus the fortitude, I wonder how your points would play out after you've already gotten an 18, a legend Dane, and then you got a fortitude captain. Because of the high cost of the dwarves and everything else, if you brought a ballista or goats or whatever, would you even have the points to fill up an extra 3 troops? So
Yeah, that's a valid question for Iron Hills because the biggest problem with Iron Hills has always been I can't get very many guys. And now that you've got 160, probably 185 point mandatory take in this army, you're still not
honestly,
gonna,
that alone restricts Iron Hills to just high points. I don't know how viable they'll be at low.
Yeah, and the issue at 5 points is they've only got one. big mega hero, and that hero can get shut down,
Yeah.
um, which is
Yes.
concerning. I think this list is potentially on the higher end of playable, but I wouldn't put it as
I actually really
competitive. I
wonder
don't think
that.
it quite makes it.
They got nerfed in so many different ways. I mean, they don't have any mounted captains to deliver some more pain in other areas of the list. They don't have they're the one area where I'll say they really shine now in this new edition is the Iron Hills ballista is extremely useful in today's meta. Uh, but other than that, they took hits pretty much everywhere.
The
Um,
the other thing that's useful in this, more useful in this army now, which is a buff, is the new way the shield wall rule is written. Because it
how's
Yeah.
what's the new way?
where you calculate the defense before you back up.
Nice. Okay.
So you can essentially kind of guarantee yourself a shield wall bonus if you structure stuff correctly on the charge and keep a solid shield wall.
Yeah.
And it is much tougher to crack a shield wall now than it used to be. And in
And that's something
particular,
I'd have to play around with
yeah,
before
in
I because
Yeah,
particular,
I
a
mean,
defense shield wall.
the reason I'm putting them in almost competitive high playable is simply because of the ballista and defense 8. I think those are both extremely important traits. Um, I'd say the ballista more so, just because of how much work it does against shooting armies. In a meta such as this one, the issue is it's small, it's not overly mobile, it's not going to have a lot of might points. So I guess in that way, the captain is somewhat helpful, but 5-up Master of Battle is still 5-up Master of Battle, so it's only going to happen 33% of the time. Um,
I don't think you're challenging heroic moves on this army. I think all of your might is reserved for strikes and killing.
yeah, it actually, so there is an interesting idea where if you win priority, if you have both the captain and Dane in range of a heroic mover, which your opponent is probably gonna not allow, um, you will have like a 55% chance of copying, which isn't bad. Um,
Because you can now copy
but
retroactively. Like, so
No,
let's
because
say
you
I
have two
call.
guys who can roll.
yeah, two
Okay.
guys who can roll fives. Um, but it's, I mean, it doesn't have Murren and Drar because Murren and Drar are they legacied?
Think their
They
legacy.
are legacy. They're not in films, so we don't know.
Yeah, so you don't have the mic batteries.
Well, no. What I'm saying is we don't, they're legacied. We have no idea. Oh, well, you mean like
Well, yes,
currently,
but you
where we're
don't you
at
don't have
today.
them now.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So yeah, it's gonna be low might, it's gonna be low numbers, it's gonna be low maneuverability, but it has a ballista and a bunch of defense 8 guys, so
Yeah,
it's
I
not bad per se.
I actually query the ballista because unless you're getting to like significantly high points values, your army gets very small if you're taking a ballista.
I don't
I
think you
think you
take
only
this
play
army at
this
not significantly high points
exactly.
values.
Like just
Yeah,
I
Dane
don't think
alone.
there's any reason to take it if you're not taking the ballista because of Arabor Reclaimed.
right.
Um,
Yep.
though I guess Arabor Reclaimed has Foot Dane in it, but then you can just take Battle of Fire. Don't take this
Erebor
list
Reclaim
unless you're
can't
taking
take
the
a mounted
ballista.
Dane.
I don't believe
Correct.
so.
Okay. Then I guess
Erebor Reclaimed is all foot and no goats. But
Yep.
Battle of Five Armies basically allows you to take more guys or take Legolas.
hmm.
Take this specifically with the intention to take the ballista, or if you want to lose or have a weird list, you can also take the Iron Hills Chariot.
So look, there is this, which is I think in Erebor Reclaim, there's very little reason to take any Iron Hills guys at all. And if what you want is an army that has
Well, you take Battle
your
Five
Iron
Armies
Hills
then.
troops in it, you may well want to take this just to give Dane the War Pig and give Dane the 5-up Master of Battle and throw some other stuff in there. I mean, but
I mean, but
whatever you do, don't
Battle of the
take these
Five
guys.
Armies if you want to thematically take an only dwarf list, um, an only Iron Hills dwarf list, then sure you can take this. Um, I do think the dwarves you can get with Battle of Five Armies, the heroes that is far outstrip the heroes here. Um, and same thing with Arabor Reclaimed and Battle of Five Armies. You could also take stuff that actually helps you, like Lake Towners that help out your numbers, Elves, which give you higher fight value. Um, yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, if
It
what you want
serves
to
little
do,
purpose, but it has a niche in the ballista, and if you want to play a very specific list.
yeah, I mean, if what you want to do is play with your dwarves, then this is probably the one for you. Just whatever you do, don't take a chariot. I think we can all agree on that.
Yeah.
Except maybe if you're going to put a captain in it, but boy, is that a lot of points.
Nothing like dropping 255, is it, points?
Yeah.
Um,
So just so you
in
know,
an army that you are already taking a 185 point
right.
hero.
So the Iron Hills Chariot, by the way, is 170 points in his fight for and gets 2 attacks up to 3 on the charge. Good luck with that.
Yeah.
Um,
Captain gives two more, right? If you take
Captain
him.
gives 2 more attacks and brings it up to fight 5, which makes it almost viable, but for an enormous cost.
I mean,
Uh,
how much is a Mumac? 300? Or is it 250 now?
that's an interesting question. Hang on.
Because this just sounds like garbage Mumac to me.
Yeah, I mean, and quite garbage, Mumac. Let's see here.
And I mean, you never take Mumacs anyways because the war leader exists. So you just
Right.
go down the tier of
Yeah, yeah. Okay,
great,
so
great trample things.
you're right. A Mumac is 250 points. A Mumac is the same number
Yeah.
of points as.
And Mumacs are ridiculously good. This is not.
Yeah, this is not. All right, yeah. If you want to run stuff over with your big giant toy, buy a Mumac. Don't buy this. Don't buy the chariot. So where did we all come out
And
on
then
this?
paint said Mumac. Enjoy that.
So I think I'm gonna say that this list. I'm gonna say that this list is playable at high points and probably is useless at low points. I think that's kind of where I come out.
Sure.
All right. Uh, all right. Now we have Arabor Reclaimed.
Oh, more dwarves.
More dwarves, which I have played.
All
Do you mind if I read this one out, Alisher, just because I played this thing?
go
I
for
say
it.
took this to a tournament. And that way you get to read Army of Lake Town, which I know is going to be your favorite.
Oh
Sure.
yeah.
This is my favorite.
Oh, I just realized we have a very depressing podcast today for a lot of people.
Yep.
Is
Um,
Survivors after that?
yeah, Survivors maybe after that.
Oh
By the way,
boy.
we were saying before we did this, we didn't think we were going to be finding any useless army lists, but we're about to get into one. Not Arabor Reclaimed. Arabor Reclaimed is not useless. Um, so Arabor Reclaimed has Thorin Oakenshield, King Under the Mountain, who is the one fate defense 8 Thorin Oakenshield, who you can get with Orcrist. You have Heroes of Valor, and you have Keely and Feely, who have now, in addition to going up to defense 8, gotten an additional might point. So the 3 might each. Balin and Dwalin, the heavily armored versions. You have Dane Ironfoot, who can be on foot for 160 points. You can get Iron Hills Warriors if you want. And then you have Biffer, who now has the ability to get his head spike. He still has the head spike ability, although it's somewhat less effective because you got to roll an intelligence test in order to use it. You have Bofer, who has his same bubble of dissipating special rules and magic that he had in the original rule. Plus, he comes with you can spend 100 points and get him on a troll brute, and we'll discuss the pros and cons of doing that. You have Bomber, who's defense 7, but 3 wounds. You have Ori, who is 50 points and is now, in a certain respect, another one of the keys to this list. Because Ori now comes with a special rule where dwarves within, I think, 6 inches of him um, basically become burly. And there are a lot of dwarves in this list that kind of depend on that. Because there's a lot of the heroes of Arabor that now have two-handed weapons, but don't have burly. Dwalin still has burly, but a lot of these guys don't have burly, so they start to get -1s if they get too far from Ori. But as long as you keep Ori in kind of the middle of your ball, you have a whole bunch of +1 wounding dwarves in this army, which solves the problem that Thorin's company has, like going in against defense 7 guys, because these guys can crack defense 7 with the +1 to wound. So we got Ori, we got Nori, whose claim to fame is 3 attacks and defense 9. So he's a great tank. You have Dory, who can be brought up to 3 attacks, and I think has, again, +1 to wound with a two-handed weapon. You have Oin, who has a whole bunch of different special rules. He's got his Master of Battle ability. He's got an ability to heal people, and he has an ability to spend will to allow people to re-roll. So he's kind of a quasi banner that you can use as many times as you want. You have Gloin, who's a 3 attack, sometimes 4 attack if you put him into two guys, fight 6 guy. And you can get Iron Hills captains, who I think have no role at all in this army. And then you have special rules. The dwarves they're rallying. Any hero in this list can declare a heroic march. This is with might, by the way, and not with will, so you want to save this. But infantry models in this army can still charge after participating in a heroic march. So if you're calling a heroic march, you're basically just allowing your troops to move 8 inches, which can really surprise people all of a sudden when your dwarves can start charging farther than your troops can move. It has the same family ties as the Thorin Company's rule, so you can spread the might, will, and fate amongst the families. And you have the to the king. If your army contains only hero models with the infantry keyword at the beginning of the game, the friendly models may re-roll any to wound rolls of a natural 1 when making strikes, which ordinarily is kind of a meh rule, re-rolling 1s to wound. But you're rolling so many dice to wound with this army, because everybody's got 2, 3, or conceivably 4 dice to roll when they're attacking. You actually roll a significant number of 1s. And the fact that you're getting +1 to wound with a whole bunch of these guys means that the ability to reroll those 1s could actually measurably increase your damage. So this is not a rule to be scoffed at. When I was playing this army, I was rolling a lot of 1s and re-rolling them into a lot of wounds when I was playing this. So there's a significant reason in this list just to play it all heroes, all dwarves, if you needed more than 1. So
I mean, re-rolling 1s is also more useful the lower the dice rolls need to be, in the sense that if you're strength 4 or strength 5 and have +1 to wound, normal troops you're wounding on 4s, in which case re-rolling 1s gives you about an 8% boost to your chance of wounding, which is somewhat significant, unlike rolling 6s where it's like 2. So it's not awful.
yeah,
It adds.
yeah. So I played this army in a tournament. The big limitation, I think this army is a competitive army. I think what stops this army from being a dominant army, at least in the current scenario meta, is its inability to take a banner.
Which
And
is apparently death of a mission at this point.
it is. I mean, there was a game I lost basically just on banner points, um, and that was against whatever the Armies of the West won, which is another.
What do you mean you can't take a banner?
It was the Fornost one.
Yeah,
is what
the
you
foreign
lost
squad,
against.
right? Yeah.
Which, by the way, we'll go over it when we get into Armies of Lord of the Rings. Very good Legion. Very good,
Yeah.
not Legion. Very good army.
Yeah. And then I also lost the game to Evan, who had Evan had the Men of the West, I guess. So he had,
Yes.
and we were playing domination. So he had Aragorn and a bunch of guys that, another Achilles heel of this list is, you have a small number of bodies in this army, and that poses a problem against armies like our with Aragorn in it that can always basically be calling moves, and you can just get
Marches.
outnumbered on objectives. But if you are in a game where you're just going to have a stand-up fight, this is one of the toughest armies in the game to deal with. I'm not sure that if there was a scenario where we were just going to have like a head-to-head fight, I would put this army against anything else in the game, including Dale, including whatever,
Well,
because
Dale actually crumbles in close combat, surprisingly.
well, I mean, it can do a lot. It can do a lot of damage if it has numbers.
Not as much in this edition.
Yeah,
Yeah,
well, when I fought
But
against it, I
especially
actually
against
was beating it
heroes.
up. So,
yeah. I mean, Dale's
Well, you
ability
also
is
had Defense 8.
yeah,
yeah, true.
yeah. You have
Yeah.
defense 8, so you can take the hits, and you have a bunch of fate, and
He
you
had plus
also
one to wound.
have
That cracks defense 8, but
um, but you have the ability with the might and the banner effect from Thorin in this list to
yeah.
very rarely lose fights. And if you're going to lose a fight, you can always be like, all right, I'm going to take this guy's might and make sure I win this fight. And then I'm going to, and if you like an army against Dale that's like defense 4, defense 5, just when it loses a combat, it's dead
Okay. Yeah.
against this army. So I think the only thing that really restricts this army are its inability to take a banner and its kind of its weakness against very mobile armies in like a domination like scenario where it's got to go in a whole different direction.
Why can't you take a banner? You're talking about Arabor Reclaim?
Arabor Reclaimed, it doesn't have it.
Well,
Oh well,
the way that Dad likes to play it, which is all heroes, you
right.
cannot take it
Yeah,
back.
I take it back. You can take an Iron Hills warrior with a banner, and I actually thought about doing that and throwing an Iron Hills
Probably just
warrior with a
gonna
banner.
die is the problem.
I mean, I
Yeah,
do it just for troll brutes. That's
yeah,
troll brute
because
kills.
you basically the way this typically works, you have to like sacrifice a dwarf to get that banner. And I mean, maybe actually you do. I mean, maybe given my experience, if I had to do it over again, I'd sacrifice one of the dwarves and take a banner. But
Sure.
um,
For the amount of points that they're worth, they maybe would be worth it. And it's not like it's not helpful
no,
to
yeah,
your
no,
army.
that's fair. That's fair. Yeah,
The only problem is risking it getting assassinated since you can't
yeah,
pass it.
yeah. There's nobody you can pass it to, and if Legolas comes along and just shoots him and puts all the might
Yeah,
into it.
burn a couple of might and then it's dead. Um, yeah, I mean, your analysis was pretty thorough. I'd probably put it lower than you just because it's got the same problem. Well, it's got one of the same problems as Thorin's company in that domination is not fun for it. Um, Destroy the supplies is also not fun for it. Just because you destroy their supplies, they destroy your supplies, they have a banner. Um, Reconnoiter is really not fun for it. It has the exact same problem where it doesn't have dominance, so it doesn't have the guys to be able to win that scenario.
Yeah,
Um, and for that reason, it's like right on the edge of competitive and playable for me. But I don't think that accurately reflects how nightmarish it is to play against because I had Men of the West with Aragorn and a bunch of Defense 7 guys. It should do pretty well into it. I looked at the army, looked at all the special rules, looked at my guys, did the math, and I'm like, this is the way I win this is not fighting it. So I
it's
went and I grabbed the objectives and domination and playing like needing to play like that to win is not fun. So I don't enjoy I don't enjoy the process that armies like that force. Um, so in that way, I don't really like it. I can't quite firmly put it in competitive just because of the scenario issues it has, but in lower point tournaments, it definitely could win. Not lower point, lower game tournaments, it definitely could win.
Yeah, I think that's about right. All right. Anything else on Arabor Reclaimed?
I think it's kind of funny that the to the king rule says if your army contains only hero models with the infantry keyword, given that they all have to have the infantry keyword.
There is one
Oh,
hero that,
who?
well, actually, here's an interesting thing. Is a war beast infantry?
So
Because
I
if you
would have
take
initially said
Beaufort
yes in the
No,
on,
old edition, but
no.
no in the new one.
Yeah. So yeah. So just briefly on the Troll Brute, because I said we would talk about it. I mean,
The
the
answer
Troll
is
Brute is
yes.
fun because you get Beaufort on the Troll Brute, and basically he's very hard, if not impossible, to magic or special rule. So that Troll Brute's going to pretty much go wherever the heck you want it to. And he can call marches with it. The two downside, well, there's three downsides to the Troll Brute. First of all, it's 100 points, and you have to give up, two of your dwarven heroes to get them. Um, the second one is that because he is roughly 3 inches high, and you measure Beaufort's bubble of cancel magical effects from him, if you put him on the Troll Brute, you lose that. Basically, he protects only himself,
Can he
and
dismount?
that's a big downside.
Actually,
Because
that's a good
not
point.
dismount.
yeah,
Are you sure? There's
yes,
no.
he
Okay.
is he is a separate model from the Troll Brute, who is a war beast.
Wait. So you are saying you can dismount?
Oh no, I'm sorry. You can dismount him. I think
Yeah.
actually.
So that's a good
Can you?
question from Alisher because I
Actually,
mean
no. Actually, no, I'm not
the
sure
war
So
you
beast
would you
won't
can.
have to
run.
jump and then take 2 or 3 strength 3
No.
hits?
It's not a jump because you're dismounting.
I'm
You're.
not. I'm not
It's not
sure
like
you
the
He's
can
not
house.
voluntarily
cavalry. You
dismount from a
can't
war beast.
dismount a Mumak.
Yeah, hang on a second.
Yeah, I guess
I'm
you.
pretty sure you can't do that.
Huh.
I
I
mean,
think
it's
once he
still a
once he's
war
in there, he's
beast.
stuck in there till the troll boots
It
dead.
is one of the two war beasts.
Can you
Yeah.
still blast a
No.
model off of?
No.
Sorcerer's Blast does not
Oh,
function
it
like
doesn't
that
move
anymore.
you. Oh, that's right.
That's
Of course.
interesting. Yeah, no,
What
that's a
about
good
call wins?
point.
Can you call wins a model off the Mumak?
No,
Nothing, no
no.
movement effects will do anything, or push effects, I think.
Well, that's
Correct. There's no 50-50 roll knocking them off the thing.
Yep.
so that's
All
kind of
right. So yeah, no, I think you're right. There is no rule to be a lot like
Yeah.
there's nothing defining you can dismount, so therefore the
Correct.
default is you
Haven't.
cannot.
Right.
So
Yeah, I mean it's a war beast, and in the war beast rules, technically, potentially you could jump him off of the beast,
no, he doesn't have the
and
ability to
then
jump. They act as a single
Now
model. So if you're jumping,
the first
the war beast
sentence
will be jumping.
the first sentence on page 95 under the commander is the commander of a war beast is always in a fixed position on the war beast. It says, and whilst riding it may not move from that position. So I think
It's pretty clear.
while he
yeah,
is riding it,
you
he
can't
can't
make him unride it via
make him
any
unride.
method. So yeah, he's just up there. He can't leave.
Yeah.
Hmm.
so. If the war, if what happens if falls off?
Uh, sorry, what you cut out there, Alisher? What did you say?
What happens if the war beast dies but he doesn't?
Oh, then
He
he's
falls.
fine. Then he can go and do his stuff.
Yeah, so
If he
you have to
falls
throw
and
the war
then
beast forward and then politely ask your opponent to kill it.
By the way, the third disadvantage of putting him on the Troll Brute is that he's also not within 3 inches of anyone else in his family. So he can't benefit from the free might, free will,
This is,
free fate.
but that
Pretty
contributes to
well-written rule.
throw it in and just let it die. Throw
Yeah,
it,
but
kill
That's
some
that's a great
model,
thing to do
and then
with a model you spent 100 points on.
yeah, exactly.
I mean, you kill 10 guys. If you kill 10 guys, we're chilling.
Yeah. I don't know. I haven't tried it. I'm not sure it's a never take, but the the disadvantages to having because I've got him modeled on the troll brute. I could put him on the table.
I think you need to play him with. I want your analysis
All right, maybe
playing
I'll try it.
Troll Brute.
Well, you played against Avery, who had two troll brutes, right? Though that was the Azog's
How did
thing.
that
Yeah.
go?
Well, I was playing Lothlorien, and I had double caster Lothlorien. So
Oh, it didn't go.
I mean
Well,
it
sounds like it
it's
didn't go.
all right. So we're digressing, but let's digress because this is fun to talk about. Um,
This is what
the
we do on this podcast. Otherwise, they just watch people that actually put effort into their
yeah.
recordings.
Um, because I played this a couple times. I played this with a Mumak versus the Witch King, and then I played, the dual caster Lothlorien against two troll brutes in the Azog's Legion. And the caster versus Warbeast dynamic is now very interesting and not clearly weighted in one favor or another, because you need to get reasonably close to affect the Warbeast with a spell. And all you can really do is make it so that the Warbeast goes straight ahead. You can't shut it down anymore, which means that in a lot of circumstances, if like you're getting your caster within 12 inches and transfixing the guy on top, that thing will still roll. If it's a Mumak, it'll roll forward 8 inches. If it's a Troll Brute, it'll roll forward 6. Or if we're in Azog's Legion and he's called the special rule that, well, actually, if he's transfixed, he's still going forward 6. But if you blow the transfix, that thing may be rolling forward 9 inches and be almost on top of you. So you have to kind of play this game where you use terrain to kind of mask your casters and have them pop out and go boo to the Mumak and get it to come forward or whatever. And then if you're the Warbeast player, you have to be kind of very careful as you position, because if you end up getting transfixed, you're going full straight ahead. And particularly if the other guy has multiple casters, like there was one point where Avery had two troll brutes, and to get around a house, he had left them positioned so that instead of being strictly parallel to each other, one of them was kinked inward like this. And so I got priority. I double channeled with both my casters, came in and transfixed both Warbeasts, or both Warbeast commanders. So what was going to end up happening is they're going to go forward, and whichever one went first was going to get hit by the other, because their lines were intersecting. So what Avery had to do was take one of his captains. He moved one first, and then he took one of his captains and maneuvered it in front of the second one, which was yet to move. Basically, had his own captain say "stop," and use it to basically as a roadblock to the troll brute, which worked. The captain only took one wound and was able to save it with fate. But that was how he had to get out of that situation, was basically to use his own captain to block the second Warbeast. So there's all sorts of fun dynamics that kind of go with it, with the spells and the Warbeast. And I really like how they've kind of done that.
Did Avery spam Goblin Mercenaries, or did he use regular?
He had Berserkers. He had a small list that was like all Berserkers,
Okay.
two captains, a bunch of Berserkers, a banner, and then two Troll Brutes.
All right. Cannot take a loss.
But anyway, having digressed. All right. So anyway, that's kind of the Troll Brute dynamic. All right. So maybe we got to play this. Maybe we got to see if there's because look, I've been so focused on the all dwarf hero version of this because it's just so much fun to play, that I haven't really explored alternate builds, and maybe there's
I
an
think
alternate build.
honestly there is merit to taking a standard shield wall infantry, because this list, the heroes are cheaper, which means you can take more troops. And paradoxically, the heroes are also better whilst being cheaper. Like, for example, I'd take Nori or Ori over one of the captains any day, especially because they also have heroic march. Um, and you can heroic march into combat, which means
Yep.
on that first turn, you can really position your dwarves exactly where you want them to be as you charge into combat.
Yep.
So I think there is actually merit to playing a version of this. Obviously, not having the Goat Riders is annoying because you won't have Cav, but I think there's a lot of interesting ways you can go with this list.
Is that
Yeah.
not also another reason to take the Troll Brute? Because what's his face can call a heroic march, whereas oh no, this one can as well. Never mind. But you have two
Yep.
might to call a heroic march, not one.
Yep. No, that's a fair point. There's certainly plenty of advantages that putting Boffer on the Troll Brute gives you. Because you're probably not gonna stop him with a caster. He's gonna go wherever the heck he wants to, and if he wants to, he can march. And you also don't need to take Thorin Oakenshield in this list too if you don't want to. So that's a whole bunch of points you can spend someplace else. So yeah, I know. Like I said, I've got tunnel vision on these dwarven heroes because they're fun. But there may well be other ways to do this list.
And
All right, Alisher. Now comes Army of Lake Town.
yeah, this might be, I think we're approaching the 2 hour mark pretty fast. So this might be the last list that we review for this segment. We'll have to see. But everybody's favorite Army of Lake Town. Here's a Valor, the Master of Lake Town. Here's a Fortitude, Alfred the Counselor, Braga Captain of the Guard, Bard the Bowman, Tariel Ranger of Mirkwood, Keeley, Feely, Beaufort, Oin, Lake Town Captain, Independent Heroes, Bard's Family, Warriors, Lake Town Guard with either a bow or a spear option. The additional rules, Bard Family may be included in Tariel's Warband rather than Bards if you wish. Lake Town Guard may only be included in warbands of a Lake Town hero model. All right, Master's Coin. At the end of his activation, if he is within 3 inches of Braga, the Master of Lake Town may spend a will point. If he does, Braga immediately regains a will point spent earlier in the battle. Heir of Self-Importance. The Master of Lake Town, Alfred, and Braga may not take part in any heroic actions declared by Bard or member of Bard's family. I shall protect you. Tariel may include Keely, Feely, Beaufort, Oin, Oin in her warband. Additionally, if Tariel is within 3 inches of a friendly dwarf model who's engaged in combat, she gains a bonus of +1 to wound making strikes. Stubborn to a fault. Friendly dwarf models may reroll failed wound rolls when making a shooting attack or when making strikes. Okay. Um, well, I think generally, I mean, so on one hand, this list seems like more interesting in the sense that it's built with a larger variety of heroes. On the other hand, they kind of blew up the list, if I recall, in how they organized it. Like none of this list really works like how it worked previously. Lake Town Guard are more expensive than noticeably, in fact, more expensive than they were. Bard is
I'd say remarkably so.
in terms of change, or
In
you're
terms
saying
of
Well,
points,
in terms of how expensive they are,
I mean they're almost
their
double.
points cost has increased by
a
Yeah,
third.
40%.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
It's with basically no change to their profile.
Pretty
Bard's
aggressive.
warband is arguably worse. No, his warband or his profile is worse
Can
than
he lead Lake Towners? Lake Town.
because he's a Lake Town. He has the
Well,
key,
yeah, but he's like
which just says
chased
that
by them in the films. So I'm trying to.
I think he
I mean,
does.
yeah,
He still can lead.
Bard is bad.
says Lake Town guard may only be included in warbands of Lake Town hero model. I'm assuming he has that keyword.
I think he does. I'm just checking
Yes.
that now.
Yeah.
Yeah, Lake
Um,
Town.
Sigrid and Tilda work worse. You have to take Bane. So you're really
Is the
probably
master required in the list, or could it be
No.
led by Bard? Okay.
I mean, no, but why would you ever not take him? He's
Yeah,
the only
I don't
model
know.
that is.
If you are going to build a list that is Toriel, Keely, Feely, Beaufort and Oin, which may be a viable build for this at low points.
Ignore
I
the
wouldn't
Lake
say
Towners. They
viable,
are
but I'd say probably better than
reroll
Uh,
plus
the alternative.
Ontario. The Masters. Banner. There's just so much of this army as a special rule, so I'm not going to cover all of them, but a couple of them. The Master's Banner thing is worse this edition in the sense that it's smaller. Um, I
It
think
is
Price of
off
Greed
of
is the
will
same.
points, right?
Oh, it's off of will points, not my points this
How
edition.
many will does he have? Four?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's not bad, especially because you can't sap will him anymore because sap will doesn't exist. So
Sense.
that's not bad.
You can also
Um,
regain whenever an enemy hero model within 3 inches of the Master of Lake Town is removed as a casualty, he gains a will point back. Um, Additionally, if he's in base contact with an objective marker during the end of a turn, he may regain. So, I mean,
oh,
the Master's profile is not actually terrible. I'm not gonna. I mean, reduction of he's more
how much is he?
70, so he was 50. Now he's 70. That's probably something we weren't supposed to disclose, but sorry, Jay. Um, Banner's worse. He can re. I would say he has like a consistent way of like continuing his banner though, better than
Yeah. Alfred's not good now, so
Alfred. I
it's
mean,
good that he has that.
yeah, Alfred is
Is he
just
not good? I mean, he seems
he's
kind
not
of
great. He's,
Yeah,
he's a 30-point hero of fortitude, right?
he's
Still a hero.
interesting.
he's
The,
interesting.
the issue is A, he's unreliable, and B, he's 10 points more expensive than he used to be. He's now 30 points.
He doesn't
Which is a
have to
little
spend
weird.
resources to do his role though, right?
True.
Yeah.
There's like a
But I would
whole
take 3 will points to give 3 might points any day of the week over potentially maybe giving a might point, but also you have the same chance of taking a might point, but also you can give random buffs, which vary from somewhat useful to bad.
Yeah, I mean, generally speaking, like, none of these like you're trying to roll a six, none, or in certain instances related to the master. So you're really trying to like roll a two or a six if you're targeting the master. Otherwise, reroll ones is kind of it's just not great. Fearless is okay. But again, on a hero, like you're probably not going to like waste the roll. You're probably just going to try to roll on the master every turn because it doesn't necessarily matter if he loses his might because you're not using it for like heroic strike or combats. So
Well, yeah, unless you're going to try and target Bard. I don't know. Put it.
I don't think Bard offers like in terms of his role, in terms of like results that are useful. Why? So first of all, you're paying 100 and if you're gonna
Isn't Bard just like Ariel, but ever so slightly better, or maybe even
Well,
worse because he doesn't get the more attacks for like
he's fight five.
45, 50 more points? Oh
He's
yeah, he is fight five.
Does she get her
Um,
bow? She gets her bow, so she's not
yeah. So
Bard.
she's got two shots. Bard has potentially three, but probably one or two.
so Bard
Um,
does have a wind lance with a black arrow,
Can he take
um,
it though in this list? Oh, he can
which
take it.
is
yeah, he
which
can.
is
That would be the only list he could take it.
which is interesting because Bard with a black arrow and a wind lancer is just like choose one monster and delete it.
Yeah, he's just so expensive,
He is.
is the
There's
problem.
no question about it. But he does. That is what he brings to the table. I mean, he has a decent amount of shooting because he gets the bow anyway, and he also doesn't get the -1 from moving and shooting anymore, um, which is helpful with his rapid fire roll now. But
Is that where does how does he get that? He does.
he's got swift shot. It's a new
Yeah,
special
it's a
rule.
special rule he gets.
Um, but that the wind lance is actually something to think about in this rule, especially if you're going to be playing at a points level where you're going to be running into a bunch of monsters, because Bard with a wind lance can like ruin a monster list's day.
No, that's fair.
Yeah, he's expensive
I
to
mean,
do that.
also, if you're taking this list, in my personal opinion, this list is so terrible, you might as well take the Windlance out of pure fun factor as well,
That's
because
true
it's
too.
probably going to be the only thing you're going to be able to do is hit something with the Windlance with the
Is
black
it
arrow
really
and do
that like
damage.
what
Yeah.
any of you made a list? Is it really that bad?
You guys are crapping on it far worse than I would have from just
I mean,
paper.
like at face
Like,
value,
points.
it's not.
7 points for your garbage defense 4, fight 3, sometimes 4 army.
I just
It's
in the
the problem
context
is the
of the
troops are
edition as a
just
whole, though.
so terrible. In
In
the
the
context of the edition as a whole, it's worse because there's so many elves, which will shoot you to pieces and then fight you to pieces. Dale does everything better. Because Warriors of Dale are also 7 points.
I wonder
Um,
where the points are coming from. Because, like, what is it? If it's a 5
they're
point
not.
base, then you have 6 for the armor. So, like, where's that 7th point? Oh, do they have a special rule?
So they should be 5 points. That's what they were last edition, and they were appropriately costed. The
Oh,
issue is
they're
the
7
heroes
points
were
without
undercosted.
anything, like
Yeah,
without a spear.
Correct.
they're
Oh God,
Correct.
that's
practically
disgusting.
8 points.
All right, they're
They,
basically
they've
8
gone up
points.
by 2 points, and the only thing they've gotten is a situational reroll ones special rule.
Yeah, I'm wondering. I'm wondering if there's a build here, and I'm not saying this is a winning build, but like at 500 points, you can get Bard with a Wind Lance, Tariel, Keely, Feely, Bofer, Oin, all of whom are going to be rerolling failed to wounds. And then you can get um, uh, you can get like 3 Lake Town Guard just to like hide and sit on objectives. And I'm actually wondering if that's like the build. Um,
I mean, it
I'm,
certainly
I'm
might,
gonna
but probably
I'm just gonna put this out. I think it's useless. I think this I think it's on the edge of being playable. Like I would be surprised if I saw it winning a tournament, but the skill gap would have to be enormous and it would have to be a 3 game tournament.
oh yeah,
It's a bad army. It
I'd
is
be
a bad
shocked if I'd be shocked if this
it,
army won a
it is
tournament.
the perfect example of why how many points of how valued your troops are points wise is king. It's the exact reason why Warriors of Armor and Elves are so good because they're ridiculously undercosted, and these guys are going to be terrible because they're ridiculously overcosted. Um, and it's a shame because frankly they could have left the troops exactly the same, nerfed all of the heroes, and it would have been a decent, fair army that wasn't as ridiculous as last edition, and that would
Yeah,
have been fun.
They basically overtuned this like the opposite direction, trying to overcalculate or over adjust for what was going on.
Yeah, they
It's
needed a
unfortunate.
precision rifle and they pulled out the rocket launcher.
yeah. Alternatively, by the way, at 500 points, instead of getting those 3 Lake Town dudes, you could get Alfred and just have him follow Bard around and
but again, like
go,
what you're
I
trying to
bless
get.
you, I bless you, I bless you. And
Trying
see
to
what
get
No,
happens.
because
this.
Alfred's 30 points.
Yeah, I know. It was 470 points.
Oh,
Is
then you would take 4 Lake Town dudes.
well, no, because they're 8 points each. Oh, that's right. You can
Oh
get
no,
him. You can get him 7 points. Yeah, you can
you
get
can
four.
get them
Sorry.
out. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. I forgot about that. Um, yeah, all right. So you get 4 Lake Town guys, or you could get Alfred, who might be fun.
I don't know. I'm not gonna.
I mean, maybe that's on the bottom rung of playable.
I think it's like it's fine. It's not great, but it's fine. Again, like hordes are down in this edition. Like all of the hordes are
Not all of the hordes.
Moria.
We'll get to some of the new hordes. Hillman.
Oh, well,
um,
see, I like that's so far out of my.
Wait, the Hillmen are actually pretty decent.
At lower points, they're pretty decent.
at lower
Yeah.
points,
They're untested at higher points.
I don't. I mean, I think I don't know if I think we're probably going to cap it there for this episode. I think the next list that we will end up reviewing is a more depressing,
We're what, an hour and 30, hour and 40 in?
something like that.
Something like that. I mean,
Two
we
hours
could
is usually where
potentially,
I'm kind of like, I think it should be
yeah,
capped at that.
we could potentially discuss what's next, Survivors,
survivors. Do we want to?
just
Do we
to
want
just
to?
to tie a bow on it.
Here, let's see. How far have we gotten in this as far as halfway through?
I
Let's see
think
if
what
we're
we've done 4 lists.
no. I don't know. Do we want to do survivors before we wrap this up? That'll be our sixth list.
I mean, so I like, depressing episode, honestly. All this has been a lot of like, I think we've had one list. We're like, oh yeah, like this is actually good. We like this. Like this works. And all the rest of them have been like, this is
Well, okay, so being playable is technically not we're not crapping on the army. It might be just a reduction from what it was before, but I think playable should be at least a standard for the game as a whole. Like
it's really
honestly, I'm not even sure a number one should ever exist. Like,
Yeah, so I mean, that's fair. And I think like, I don't know how much you want to take into consideration statistics, but like from a winning percentage in terms of recorded statistics, Army of Lake Town was one of the most consistently winning lists of the last edition. I think on
well,
Longshanks anyways, it had like a 75% win rate at tournaments that it was taken to, which was like between 5 and 10 percentage points higher than the next closest thing. So to some degree, all right, yes, it's significantly worse relative to last edition, but last edition it was by all means pretty exceptionally good.
the argument I would have here is Evan's report is like they are trashed here, is what it sounds like you're kind of getting at here. And
He said like
that's what I would want to
right
see is like
below playable, like
below playable.
slightly below playable.
I guess I mean they are overcosted. I'm not gonna, but I mean you still have cheap heroes. Alfred's 10 points more. Can any of the dwarves lead Lake Towners?
No.
No. Yeah,
Uh,
I mean, so I think Evan is dead on as far as the old traditional Army of Lake Town build, which was which was Master, Alfred, Braga, and then Captain and as many troops as you could get in, because everything got more expensive, like hugely more expensive, like 7 or 8 points, which is um, given that they're given their stats isn't worth it. And then the rest of kind of the army buffs have been really suppressed. You can still build a horde with this, but there are now better hordes that are out there and that will beat it. I mean, Ugluk scouts will tear
Well, yeah.
through Army of Lake Town like it's paper. And but I mean they get kind of these in the dwarves and in Toriel, they get kind of some interesting bells and whistles, but I'm not sure that there's anything to take other than the bells and whistles. But I mean, maybe there's a playable version in here that balances out some of those bells and whistles with enough, kind of bodies to give it some substance to it. I don't know. Because I mean, there's some decent bells and whistles, but they're all on, Toriel and the dwarves. So it's like the army of Lake Town has shifted from this is my giant horde of really cheap guys who effectively fight four, to this is the supporting cast for Toriel and my group of dwarves, and maybe Bard with a Windlance. Which I mean, look, from a movie plot perspective, is probably accurate.
mm.
There was no kind of lore justification for the way the army played in the last edition. And this kind of, if you're looking at this, if you're looking at the changes to Army of Lake Town 2, have they made this list work more like it worked in the movie? Then the answer is clearly yes. It's just, it's this, but this list is not going to function the same way it functions in.
So just to put some understandable figures on how dramatic this 2 point increase is, um, a, an Army of Lake Town list in this edition that is 450 points would be a 375 point Army of Lake Town list last edition.
Well, so
You
yeah,
get
but I mean,
about
to your father's point, though, I mean, if you compare it to what it was before, no one is disagreeing that they didn't take the hardest nerf bat in history. But like, if you're trying to get it to what it's supposed to be like from the films, then it would make sense that the army should reduce in size. I'm not saying it's a good army, but I'm just saying like,
there's a
you know,
weird fine line between like are all of the lists supposed to perfectly reflect like lists in the movie? Because like
unfortunately, yes.
I just
You
don't
could
like,
tell that's what they're going for.
but like
You,
from the perspective of game balance, like I don't know, because
Oh,
then
do we agree
any
with it? Is yeah.
But then, like, the idea is that any army that wins out, it like, Men of the West should be one of the greatest. Even in this edition, it's not the greatest list, but like, it should be one of the absolute best lists because it's an army that wins out. Battle of the Five Armies should be one of the absolute
I
best.
mean,
I mean, are
and
we
and
sure that
Dale
they're
should
not?
be garbage because they
Well,
got
yeah,
torched by a dragon.
exactly.
But
So,
Yeah, I
like,
know.
to some degree, that's
Well,
not
to be fair, I'll give
representative
them
in
a
our
pass
game.
on being destroyed by Smaug.
yes,
I'll give.
Well,
the
look,
no,
in this
because in
edition,
this edition they absolutely
Oh, they
destroy
would wreck
Smaug
Smaug.
in a
Yeah.
yeah,
way that no other army does.
yeah, in this edition, if you had to pick one army to take on Smaug, it would be the Garrison of Dale. I mean, in this edition, Smaug's decision to attack Dale would go down in the history of
That's the
Middle Earth as
greatest
one of the
blunder.
greatest tactical blunders of all time.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Like, I just feel
Wrong city, bro.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm picking and
Pick
choosing.
literally any other city.
Yeah.
Yeah, like,
You don't understand. We have an annual barbecue where we serve dragon. Yeah.
I still think
It's a city holiday.
I still think it's funny they have hatred dragon, but it's like they don't deal with dragons. Like they don't know anything about them.
It
I
never. How can we
guarantee
hate
you,
them? It's
none
never
of those
come up
clowns
before.
had ever woken up seeing a dragon before Smaug coming, and
I
then they
think
got
the
instantly incinerated. They didn't have time to grow to hate dragons because they died so quickly.
right.
Yeah,
So,
It's like what?
I think to some degree, Devin, like, yeah, they do go for that, but they go for it in such a picky and choosy kind of a way. And like, it may sound excessive.
Well, okay. The inconsistency argument, though, has been made. The game is wildly inconsistent. Any theory you throw out there, you can find an example where that doesn't work with the theory.
I
And
know.
I think that's been pretty much proven to death at this point. Like that,
It's weird
because what
that,
they give
like,
it the reasons why things were legacied, and like no reason actually makes any sense. So
it's weird though when they seemingly overcorrect in nerfing these lists when it's like, okay, you're saying
mhm.
there isn't consistency, and then you're over. It just,
No, so what I'm saying is that I think the general idea they went with this army in particular was to make it
no,
one, depower it, two,
yeah,
make it more like the movies. And they technically succeeded there. But then, yeah, if we make that same assumption throughout everything, um, then yeah, you start finding holes. So I know that like the Battle of Five Armies, actually, me and Matt were talking about it. There's no Iron Hills chariot, but yet you clearly see them all over that battlefield. Not
yeah.
fighting the elves, mind you, like fighting Azog, but they're not there. So and we could keep going on that with examples, and it's just like, yeah, unfortunately, that's my take on that is this is technically the newest the game has ever been because in every other iteration of the game, they just took the previous edition and built on it, which is a great foundation. Here's the first time they're like, yeah, screw all that. We're going to reinvent every list from scratch. And I'm not sure how much time went into that, but you would need years to make this go right.
Yeah, that's
So
fair. And like again,
that's
we're having this conversation now. Things will change between now and when the edition matures. At this point,
mhm.
the edition's in its infancy. For all we know, we're recording this early February. In 2 weeks from now, they could errata the cost of Lake Town Guard. That's not impossible. In relation, anyways, to survivors, I'm hoping we're going to get some form of errata.
My concern, well, it is so rare that they errata points
This is true.
values
No, this
that
is
Super
I
rare.
think that will be unlikely. Um, but yeah, we'll
I think
see.
the army's going to stay the
To
way
some
it is.
degree,
I mean,
like there's always, and I don't know that this is a good argument, but like there's always the chance that it was a mistake. I mean, I could hope that it was a mistake, and in which case they might change it. But then again, they did that like
If it was a mistake, it would have.
Would have been
I think
fixed
it would have
already.
probably been in the day one
and that's
yeah.
fair.
erratas.
That's fair.
I
I
don't
don't.
think
Like
it's
the
a
two attack
mistake. I think
elves
they purposely
or strength four
overcosted
elves.
it.
Oh, dear sweet strength for elves.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Never got to properly play them.
yeah. Damn it.
Yeah, I don't think it's a mistake, Alisher. I think there
I
was a
mean, I
genuine
can.
intention to overcost
I
them.
can
I don't know
have
why.
delusional hope. Okay.
Yeah. No. So here's the one way it could be fixed. Maybe in the future, if there is another variation of the army, because the master is only in one list, right?
Yeah.
Like this is the only list he's in.
The only list he's in.
So if there's ever a future variation, and I don't think this is going to happen, maybe, future variation of the army where it's like this is the book version where Bard leads the army and the master is actually like kind of a footnote. I mean, maybe they might get different special rules to account for all the crap,
Yeah.
That'd be the only way I'd know to fix it other than I don't know what other legion the master would ever go in. Um, in order to and the Lake Town Guard, are they playable within the Battle of Five Armies?
Mm.
No.
No.
Is there still the note that you can use Army of Lake Town
Use the
model?
models.
Yeah, no, I mean,
I don't know.
Did we lose the note?
yeah,
My
this
guess would be
list,
probably not.
You probably lost the note. Yeah.
this list encompasses all of the circumstances in which the master and the army of Lake Town could ever play. Because you can build this list as like just him and his guards, or you could build this list as him and his guards and Bard, or you could build this list as him and his guard and all of the other folks who are running around in Lake Town when Smaug was attacking. There
Yeah, pretty
isn't
much this
really
is
there really isn't any other kind of scenario for this list based on the movie.
so all we can hope for now is an alliance matrix one day down the road.
I'm
That's
sure
about it.
that's gonna happen.
Yeah, right.
Definitely.
Chances are almost zero. Um,
I mean, we could get some sort of errata or whatever to the
I think you're waiting for a
masters.
new edition on this one.
Yeah, it may well be.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just saying it would probably be possible to fix this list by like giving the master back some of his old abilities. If, for example, you don't take Bard in the dwarves,
Yeah.
you could give him something like that to make this work. But that's, I think, the only way to do this.
Fair enough. Well, if anyone wants to buy an Army of Lake Town Army, let me know.
I mean, here's the thing for me, my thought is if the game doesn't die, then eventually it will change again. And I'm a pretty diehard Lord of the Rings player at this point. So I will continue to buy shit armies that I'll wait till the next edition shows up and be like,
One
cool, this
one
is
day ruffians will be good.
yep,
A long
I've bought them. I bought a whole ruffian army. I'm never gonna
Hey,
be able to play them damn things for a while, but
Alisher,
Um,
do you want to reach out to Rainier and see if he wants to buy your Army of Lake Town Army? Because I heard all of his armies got trashed and he's on the market for a new one.
yeah.
That'd really perk him up.
Well, yeah, his Army of Lake Town, my Army of Lake Town Army was originally his Army of Lake Town Army, so
You want it back?
Yeah, I was about to say, I bet he's real glad about that now.
might do a package deal and give him Survivors too, because Survivors are pretty depressing. Do we want to continue on, or do we want to call it at this
I,
point?
I, I mean, me
No.
personally, at the 2 hour mark, it's pretty
Yeah,
done.
why don't we call it at this point? Because we kind of did a wind down.
All
I think
right.
it probably makes more sense
Well,
to start on a happy note
More
next
about
time with
just
Survivors
how-
of Lake Town.
Just how garbage survivors
in
are
case
as well.
anybody's keeping track, if we've reviewed 6 lists, only one of them is actually good.
Well, on the other hand, I think only one of them was actually trash.
This is true. Well, I mean,
That was our grand finale.
Yep. So
and for those who are going to tune in next time, there's a lot to look forward to because the other half of the good armies are much better, I think.
Yep.
yeah, fair enough.
Okay,
Okay.
then survivors of Lake Town, yes.
All right.
All right, well, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode of An Unexpected Podcast. If you have any thoughts or comments, feel free to leave them. I don't know about the rest of you guys. I check the comments every once in a while, so you guys have some interesting things to say. But with that said, we're probably going to drop off this episode and see you all in the next one.
Soon.